The monster's breath was hot on 4-year-old John's neck. He ran through the dark hallway of Sunnybrook Orphanage, his small legs pumping as fast as they could carry him, his heart hammering so hard he could hear it in his ears. Behind him, the thing that used to be Mrs. Beatrice was getting closer. Her footsteps shook the floor. Her shadow stretched across the walls like a living nightmare. "John," her voice boomed, deeper than any human voice should be. "You cannot escape me, little boy." John risked a glance over his shoulder and immediately wished he hadn't. Mrs. Beatrice's head had grown enormous, bigger than a beach ball, maybe bigger than the whole cafeteria table. Her eyes glowed red, like traffic lights stuck on stop. Her arms stretched impossibly long, reaching for him with fingers that had become gnarled claws. And she was floating. She was floating off the ground like some kind of terrible balloon filled with pure meanness. "I'm going to catch you, the Mrs. Beatrice monster shrieked, "and make you scrub every floor in this building with a toothbrush. And then I'll make you eat broccoli for breakfast, lunch, and dinner." "No!" John screamed. "Not broccoli!" He burst through the cafeteria doors, his tiny hands barely able to push them open. The monster crashed through the wall behind him, sending bricks and dust everywhere like she was made of pure destruction. Her legs had changed too. They were long and bendy now, like a giraffe's legs, but wrong. So wrong. They twisted and bent in ways that legs shouldn't bend, carrying her closer and closer. "There is no escape, child." Her mustache! And when did her mustache get so big? Had grown into 2 enormous furry ropes that writhed like snakes. "I am the Queen of Clean, and you will obey." John's foot caught on something. He went down hard, his chin hitting the cold cafeteria floor. Pain exploded across his face, but he scrambled backward anyway, his small hands slipping on the tiles. The monster loomed over him, her massive head blocking out the ceiling lights, her red eyes blazing with unholy fury. Her enormous stretchy arms reached down, 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 toward his tiny body. John screamed and fell out of bed. The impact with the real floor knocked the wind out of him. For a moment, he just lay there on the cold linoleum of the shared bedroom, blinking up at the ceiling, his heart still racing, his breath coming in gasps. Morning sunlight streamed through the barred windows. Regular ceiling, regular orphanage room, with its regular peeling paint and regular smell of old building, and too many kids in one place. "Dude, what's wrong with you?" John turned his head. His twin brother James was sitting up in the bed next to his, looking annoyed in that special way only James could look annoyed at 6 in the morning. They were identical in almost every way. Same light brown skin, same ice blue eyes, same mess of curly hair that the orphanage ladies kept trying to comb flat. But where John's pajamas were dark gray, James always wore navy blue. It was the only way most people could tell them apart. "James," John gasped, still sprawled on the floor like a starfish. "I just had the worst nightmare of my entire life." "Was it the one where we run out of cookies again?" "No, way worse." John sat up slowly, checking to make sure all his body parts were still normal-sized and not giraffe-shaped. Mrs. Beatrice turned into a monster. James blinked once, then twice, then said in the flattest voice possible, "Bro, she's already a monster." Despite the lingering terror of the nightmare, John couldn't help but crack a smile. Around them, the rest of the boys in dormitory B were starting to wake up. There were 8 beds total in the room, and most of them held kids between ages 3 and 6. The older kids got moved to different dorms. The babies stayed in the nursery with the nice caregivers who actually seemed to like children. Dormitory B got Mrs. Beatrice. "Seriously though," James said, climbing out of his bed and padding over to where John was still sitting on the floor. "What happened in the dream?" John looked up at his brother. Despite being exactly the same age, they'd been born 7 minutes apart, with James arriving first and never letting John forget it. James always seemed older somehow, more serious, more thoughtful. While John tended to act first and think later, James planned everything out, like he was playing chess instead of living life. They made a good team. "I'll tell everyone at breakfast," John decided, accepting James's hand and letting his brother pull him to his feet. It's too good a story to tell just once. 30 minutes later, they were all in the cafeteria. Breakfast at Sunnybrook Orphanage was always the same. Lumpy oatmeal that tasted like paste, toast that was somehow both burnt and soggy, and milk that came in little cartons that said "Best Buy" dates from 2 weeks ago. But the twins had learned to make the best of it. You couldn't change what you couldn't control, and you definitely couldn't control what the orphanage served for meals. John stood on the bench even though you weren't supposed to stand on the benches, but Mrs. Beatrice was busy yelling at some kids in the other room, so who was going to stop him? And cleared his throat importantly. "Brothers and sisters," he announced in his most serious voice, "I need to tell you what I saw in my dream last night. This is not a joke. This is not a game. This is real nightmare business." The other kids there, were maybe 15 of them in the cafeteria right now, all stopped eating their terrible oatmeal and looked up at him with wide eyes. John was known for his stories. They were always entertaining, even when they weren't true. And this one was definitely true. Sort of. "Last night," John continued, gesturing dramatically with his hands like he'd seen people do in the movies they sometimes got to watch on special occasions, "I went to get a glass of water. I was minding my own business, not bothering anybody, when I heard footsteps behind me." "Ooh," said little Sarah, who was only 3 and still believed everything anyone told her. "I turned around," John said, his voice dropping to a whisper that made everyone lean in closer. And there she was, Mrs. Beatrice. But something was wrong. Her eyes. Her eyes were starting to glow. "What color?" asked Marcus, who was 5 and very particular about details. "Red," John said solemnly, "like when the devil gets angry in those church movies, like traffic lights telling you to stop, but also telling you that you're about to die." Several kids gasped. James, sitting calmly at the table eating his terrible toast, just shook his head with a small smile. "And then," John continued, really getting into it now, "her head started growing. Big, 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 like a watermelon. No, bigger than a watermelon. Like one of those giant pumpkins they show on TV during Halloween." "How big?" Sarah asked, her eyes huge. John spread his arms as wide as they would go. "This big, maybe bigger. I couldn't measure because I was too busy running for my life." "What else happened?" another kid asked. "Her arms stretched out." "Low," John demonstrated by pretending to stretch his own arms like taffy, like rubber bands, but made of nightmare. "And her legs turned into giraffe legs, tall and bendy and wrong, and she started floating, just floating in the air like a balloon, but an evil balloon that wants to make you clean bathrooms." "That's impossible," said Marcus, ever the skeptic. "People can't float." "That's what I thought too," John said triumphantly. "But there she was, floating and chasing me, and her mustache? You know that mustache she has?" Everyone knew the mustache. Mrs. Beatrice had exactly 3 thick black hairs growing on her upper lip that she refused to remove, and that all the kids found fascinating and terrifying in equal measure. "Her mustache grew into 2 giant furry ropes," John said, "like jump ropes, but alive and evil. And she was screaming." He deepened his voice as much as a 4-year-old could. "I will catch you and make you eat broccoli forever." "Ah!" all the little kids screamed. "Not broccoli." "That's what I said," John agreed. "So I ran and ran, but she was getting closer and her monster arms were reaching for me, and I could feel her hot monster breath on my neck and then what?" Sarah was literally on the edge of her seat. "And then I tripped," John said matter-of-factly. "Fell right on my face. She was standing over me, about to grab me with her horrible stretchy arms. And that's when you fell out of bed and woke up the whole dormitory." James finished calmly, taking another bite of his toast. Everyone turned to look at James. "It was very loud," James added. "You screamed like a baby." "I did not scream like a baby," John protested. "I screamed like a man who just saw a monster." "A 4-year-old man," James pointed out. "Still a man." The other kids started laughing. Even Marcus was grinning now. Little Sarah clapped her hands with delight. "But the real question is," said a new voice, making everyone freeze, "why were you out of bed in the middle of the night in the first place, John?" Mrs. Beatrice stood in the cafeteria doorway. She was not a monster. She was just a regular mean lady, maybe 50 years old, with gray hair pulled back in a tight bun and those 3 infamous mustache hairs on her upper lip. She wore the same ugly brown uniform all the caregivers wore, and she had the same permanent expression of someone who'd rather be literally anywhere else but here. But in that moment, with the morning light behind her and her arms crossed in that particularly disapproving way, John could almost imagine her head starting to grow. "I was thirsty," John said quickly, hopping down from the bench because you definitely weren't supposed to stand on benches when Mrs. Beatrice was in the room. Mrs. Beatrice said, in a tone that suggested she didn't believe him, but couldn't prove otherwise. Her eyes swept across the cafeteria, landing on each child like she was counting them to make sure nobody had escaped. "Finish your breakfast. You have 15 minutes before morning chores." She turned and left, her orthopedic shoes squeaking on the linoleum floor. The moment she was gone, everyone burst into whispers. "Do you think she heard?" Sarah asked nervously. "Nah," James said confidently. "She was too far away, and even if she did, what's she going to do? Get mad that John had a nightmare? That's not against the rules." Unquote. "Everything's against the rules," Marcus muttered, pushing his oatmeal around with his spoon. He wasn't wrong. Sunnybrook Orphanage had rules for everything. Don't run in the halls. Don't yell indoors. Don't go into the director's office. Don't leave the building without permission. Don't ask too many questions. Don't cause trouble. Don't. The twins had broken approximately 70% of those rules in the 2 years they'd been at Sunnybrook. 2 years they can say they actually remember, since they've been orphans their whole life. Not because they were bad kids, they weren't. They just had very curious minds and a strong sense of what was fair and what wasn't. And lately, they'd noticed that a lot of things at Sunnybrook weren't fair at all. "Hey," John said quietly, leaning close to James so the other kids wouldn't hear. "You notice anything weird about the cookies lately?" James's eyes sharpened. When James got that look, it meant his brain was working overtime, connecting dots that other people couldn't even see. "You mean how we're supposed to get cookies every Wednesday after dinner?" James said slowly. "But the last 3 Wednesdays, Mrs. Henderson said they were all out?" "Exactly," John said. "But I saw Mrs. Henderson carrying a whole box of cookies to her car last week." "A whole box, James. The same kind we're supposed to get." James was quiet for a moment, chewing on his toast thoughtfully. Then he said, "We should investigate." "Yeah? Yeah. But we have to be smart about it. Can't just go accusing people of cookie theft without evidence." "Obviously," John agreed. "We're professionals." They were 4 years old, but in their minds, they were professional detectives. They'd solved the case of the missing teddy bear. Marcus's bear had fallen behind the radiator. They'd solved the mystery of the weird smell in dormitory B. Someone had hidden old cheese under their mattress as a prank. They'd even solved the puzzle of why the bathroom was always flooded. The toilet in the second stall had a broken valve that nobody had bothered to fix. The cookies case would be their biggest investigation yet. But first, they had to get through morning chores. Before I continue with this investigation, I need to conduct a quick survey. Where are you watching this story right now? Are you team? Sitting on the toilet pretending you're only going to be a minute, but actually, you've been in there for 20 minutes. Team watching during your lunch break that ended 15 minutes ago, but your boss hasn't noticed yet. Or, and let's be honest here, team hiding in your car in the parking lot because you need 5 minutes of peace? Drop a comment and let me know where in the world you're watching from, because I'm collecting data for a very important investigation into human behavior. And listen, if you're already hooked on 4-year-old James and John and their mission to solve the cookie conspiracy with nothing but their genius brains and questionable decision-making skills, trust me, you haven't seen anything yet. Hit that subscribe button, because what these 2 tiny detectives are about to pull off will make you question why we even have adult investigators. Seriously. They're 4, they can barely reach the sink, and they're about to take down a whole corruption ring. Make sure to watch part 1 of this series if you haven't. Let's go. Morning chores at Sunnybrook were divided by age. The really little kids, the 1s and 2s, didn't have to do anything except try not to make too much mess. The 3s and 4s, which included the twins, had to help set tables and put away toys and sweep the dormitory floors. The 5s and 6s got the harder jobs, like washing dishes and cleaning bathrooms and helping with laundry. Nobody liked chores. But the twins had learned that chores were actually perfect for investigating, because the adults mostly ignored you while you were doing them, as long as it looked like you were working. James pushed the broom slowly across the dormitory floor, sweeping the same patch of linoleum 3 times while his eyes tracked Mrs. Henderson through the doorway. John was pretending to organize the toy bin, but really he was watching Mrs. Beatrice through the window as she supervised outdoor time in the yard. "Anything suspicious?" James whispered when they passed each other. "Mrs. Beatrice is just standing there being mean," John reported. "She yelled at Marcus for running. He wasn't even running that fast." "That's not suspicious. That's just Mrs. Beatrice being Mrs. Beatrice," James said. "What about Mrs. Henderson? Went into the supply closet 5 minutes ago. Haven't seen her come out." James frowned. The supply closet was where they kept things like toilet paper and cleaning supplies and the snacks for the kids. "I'm going to check it out," James decided. "Be careful," John said. "If you get caught, say you were looking for more trash bags." Obviously. James set his broom against the wall and walked as casually as a 4-year-old could manage toward the supply closet. The door was closed, but not locked. It was never locked, because the adults needed to get in and out all day. He pressed his ear against the door. Rustling sounds. The crinkle of plastic. And then, crunching. Someone was eating something crunchy. James carefully, very carefully, turned the doorknob and opened the door just a crack, just enough to peek inside with one eye. Mrs. Henderson sat on an overturned bucket, her back to the door, eating cookies straight from a box. Not just any cookies, the good cookies. The ones with chocolate chips that the kids were supposed to get on Wednesdays. She was eating them like she was starving, like she was the one who lived in an orphanage and didn't get enough food. James's jaw dropped, but he was smart enough not to say anything. Instead, he very carefully, very quietly closed the door and walked back to where John was still pretending to organize toys. "You were right," James whispered. "Mrs. Henderson is in there eating our cookies, like actively eating them right now." John's eyes went wide. "Our cookies?" "Our cookies. The ones we're supposed to get on Wednesdays?" "The exact same ones." John's face went through several expressions in rapid succession. Surprise, anger, determination, and then something that looked suspiciously like the expression he got right before he did something that would definitely get them in trouble. "We need to catch her," John said. "We need evidence first." James corrected. "If we just tell the director without proof, who's he going to believe? 2 4-year-olds or a grown-up caregiver who's worked here for 5 years? John deflated slightly. "The grown-up." "Exactly. So we need to be smart. We need to document everything, build a case, and then when we have enough evidence, we strike." "I love it when you talk like a detective, kid. You're going places," John said admiringly. "I love it when you listen like an intelligent person, little boy," James shot back, but he was smiling. They spent the rest of the morning chores period observing and noting. Mrs. Henderson came out of the supply closet exactly 12 minutes after James had seen her. Her face slightly flushed, and a few chocolate smudges at the corner of her mouth that she'd tried to wipe away, but hadn't quite managed. She went straight to the bathroom, probably to clean up properly, and when she came out, she looked completely normal, like she hadn't just stolen food from orphans. At lunch, watery soup that tasted like sadness and sandwiches that were mostly bread and very little filling, the twins sat together at their usual table and whispered plans. "We need to find out where she keeps the cookies," James said quietly. "Supply closet," John said. "Obviously." "Yeah, but where in the supply closet, and how many boxes are there? And is she the only one stealing them, or are other people doing it too? And who's buying the cookies in the first place?" John added. "Like, someone must be ordering them for us, right? So where's that money coming from?" James got that look again. The thinking look. The look that meant he was connecting dots. "Donations," he said slowly. "Remember last month when those people came to visit? The ones in the fancy clothes who walked around with the director and took pictures? The ones who made us all smile and wave? Yeah. The director said they were donors. People who give money to the orphanage to help buy things for us. So if they're donating money for food and stuff," John said, following the logic, "and we're supposed to be getting cookies every Wednesday, but instead Mrs. Henderson is eating them, then she's stealing," James finished. "Not just from us, from the people who donated the money thinking it was going to help kids." They looked at each other, and something passed between them. That twin thing that people always talked about, where they could communicate without words. A shared understanding that this was bigger than just missing cookies. This was about what was right and what was wrong. "We're going to catch her," John said. "We're going to catch her," James agreed. But how? James thought about it for a moment, his 4-year-old brain working through the problem with the seriousness of a much older detective. "We need to see inside the supply closet when she's not there. Count how many boxes of cookies there are. Maybe take a picture if we can." "We don't have a camera," John pointed out. "No, but Mrs. Patterson does." Mrs. Patterson was one of the nicer caregivers, the one who sometimes read them bedtime stories and didn't yell when they asked too many questions. She keeps it in her office. "We are not stealing a camera to catch someone stealing cookies," John said. That's like fighting fire with fire, but in a bad way." "I wasn't going to steal it," James said, offended. "I was going to borrow it." Without asking, James admitted, "but for a good cause." John considered this. "We need a better plan." They spent the rest of lunch period thinking. Around them, other kids talked and ate and complained about the soup, but the twins were in their own world, plotting and planning. By the time lunch was over, they had the beginnings of a plan. It wasn't a great plan. It had several holes in it, and at least 3 points where things could go very wrong, but it was better than no plan at all. The twins had learned something important in their 2 years at Sunnybrook Orphanage. Adults never expected kids to be smart. They expected kids to be cute, or loud, or messy, or difficult. But smart? Strategic? Able to plan and execute complex operations? Never. And that was their biggest advantage. That afternoon during quiet time, which was supposed to be when all the kids napped, but really was just an hour of lying in bed pretending to sleep while actually thinking about stuff, the twins finalized their plan. "Okay," James whispered from his bed, even though they were supposed to be silent during quiet time. "Here's what we do. Tonight after dinner, when Mrs. Henderson goes to lock up the supply closet for the night." "Does she lock it at night?" John interrupted. "She's supposed to. It's in the rules. All supply areas get locked at 8 p.m. "How do you know that?" "I read the staff manual." John blinked. "When did you read the staff manual?" "Last week when we were in the director's office doing that thing." "What thing?" "That thing where we had to sit there while the director talked to those people about maybe adopting us." "Oh yeah." John made a face. That had been awkward. The people, a nice couple in their 30s, had asked a lot of questions about whether the twins could be separated. Whether maybe they'd do better in different homes. Whether being twins made them too difficult to place together. The director had said probably yes to all those questions. The nice couple had left without them. It happened a lot. "Anyway," James continued, pushing away the memory, "I read the staff manual while they were talking because it was boring and the manual was right there on the desk. Rule 47B. All supply closets and storage areas must be secured with appropriate locks by 8 p.m. every night." "You remember the exact rule number?" "I have a very good memory," James said matter-of-factly. "Show off." "Focus," James said. "So tonight when Mrs. Henderson locks the supply closet, one of us creates a distraction. The other one sneaks close enough to see where she hides the key." "Why do we need to know where the key is?" "So we can get into the supply closet tomorrow and count the cookies." "Why don't we just look through the window in the door?" James paused. "There's a window in the door?" "A small one, up high, but yeah." "Why didn't you mention this before?" "I thought you knew. You read the whole staff manual." "The staff manual didn't have pictures of the doors, John." Okay, calm down." John giggled quietly. "So we don't need the key. We just need someone to boost us up to the window so we can look inside." "Who's going to boost us?" "We're 4. We weigh nothing. We can stack chairs." James considered this. "That's actually not a terrible idea. I have those sometimes. Very rarely." "Hey, boys." Mrs. Beatrice's voice came from the hallway. "Quiet time means quiet." The twins immediately shut their mouths and closed their eyes, playing possum. They heard Mrs. Beatrice's footsteps pause outside their dormitory door, heard her sigh, that particular sigh that meant she was tired of children existing, and then heard her walk away. They waited a full minute before opening their eyes again. "Tonight," James whispered. "Tonight," John agreed. Dinner that evening was the usual terrible fare. Mystery meat that might have been meatloaf, or might have been something that died of natural causes, mashed potatoes that tasted like paste, and green beans that had been boiled into submission. The twins ate without complaint, because complaining never changed anything, and also because they needed their strength for the evening's investigation. At 7:45, right on schedule, Mrs. Henderson started her end-of-day routine. She always did the same things in the same order: collect any remaining food from the cafeteria, wipe down the tables, turn off the lights in the common areas, and finally, lock up the supply closet. The twins watched from their position by the toy shelf, pretending to put away building blocks while actually tracking her movements. "Get ready," James whispered. Mrs. Henderson walked toward the supply closet, keys jingling in her hand. "Now?" John asked. "Wait for it." She reached for the doorknob. "Now." John suddenly let out the most dramatic scream the orphanage had heard since the great spider incident of 3 months ago. "Ah! Spider! Giant spider! It's huge! It's going to eat me!" Every adult in hearing distance came running. Mrs. Henderson dropped her keys and rushed over. "Where? Where's the spider?" "There!" John pointed at absolutely nothing in the corner. "It was right there. It was this big." He held his hands about 2 feet apart. "Spiders don't get that big," Mrs. Beatrice said skeptically, but she was looking in the corner anyway because nobody wanted to take chances with spiders. While all the adults were distracted searching for the non-existent giant spider, James calmly walked over to where Mrs. Henderson had dropped her keys, picked them up, and walked straight to the supply closet. His heart was pounding. This was the most daring thing they'd ever done. If he got caught, they'd probably get separated, put in different dormitories, maybe even different orphanages. But sometimes you had to take risks for the greater good. He opened the supply closet door and stepped inside. The closet wasn't big, maybe 6 feet by 6 feet, and it was crammed with shelves full of cleaning supplies, toilet paper, paper towels, and there, on the top shelf, pushed all the way to the back like someone was trying to hide them, boxes and boxes of cookies. James counted quickly. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 full boxes of the good chocolate chip cookies, the ones they were supposed to be getting every Wednesday. But there was more. Behind the cookies, he could see other stuff that definitely shouldn't be in a supply closet. Nice snacks, juice boxes, even some candy bars. All of it meant for the kids. All of it being hoarded by the staff. James felt something hot and angry bubble up in his chest. They were orphans. They didn't have parents to buy them treats. They didn't have money of their own. The only nice things they got were supposed to be from donations, from kind people who wanted to help. And the adults were stealing it. He heard footsteps in the hallway, moving fast. James quickly closed the supply closet door, pocketed the keys, and ducked behind a nearby cabinet just as Mrs. Henderson came back, looking annoyed. "I swear, these children and their imaginations," she muttered. "Giant spiders. Ridiculous." She reached for her keys, patted her pocket, frowned. "Where did I?" James waited until she turned around to check her other pocket, then rolled the keys across the floor so they ended up near her feet. "Oh," Mrs. Henderson said, looking down. "Must have dropped them." She picked up the keys, locked the supply closet without checking inside, because why would she? She didn't know anyone had been in there, and walked away. James stayed hidden for another minute, just to be safe, then casually strolled out and found John still being questioned about the spider. It was definitely real, John was insisting to Mrs. Beatrice, who looked like she'd rather be anywhere else. "I saw it with my own eyes. It had big fangs and 8 legs, and all spiders have 8 legs," Mrs. Beatrice said tiredly. "That's what makes them spiders." "Well, this one had extra 8 legs. That doesn't make sense." "I know what I saw." James caught John's eye and gave a tiny nod. Mission accomplished. "You know what?" John said suddenly. "Maybe it wasn't a spider. Maybe it was just a shadow. I get those confused sometimes." "Clearly," Mrs. Beatrice said. "Go to your dormitory, both of you. It's almost time for bed anyway." The twins didn't need to be told twice. They scampered off to dormitory B, barely containing their excitement until they were safely alone. "Did you see?" James asked the moment the door closed behind them. "Did I see? I created the diversion of the century." That was acting, James. Pure art. I meant, did you see inside the closet? Oh, no. I was busy with the spider thing. What did you find? James's expression turned serious. 6 boxes of cookies, plus juice boxes, candy bars, and other snacks. All hidden on the top shelf. John's mouth fell open. 6 boxes? 6 full boxes. That's like 72 cookies, John. Cookies that should have been ours. Those criminals. John's face was red now, genuinely angry. Those sneaky cookie-stealing criminals. Shh. James hushed him. We can't let anyone know we know. Not yet. We need a plan. What kind of plan? The kind of plan that exposes them in front of everyone so they can't deny it. The kind of plan that makes sure they never steal from us again. John's eyes lit up with understanding. An epic plan. The most epic plan. With traps? James grinned, and it wasn't a nice grin. It was the grin he got when he was about to do something brilliant and slightly dangerous. Oh, John. We're going to use so many traps. The twins had learned about traps from a movie they'd watched during one of the rare movie nights at the orphanage. A movie about a kid who was left alone in his house and had to defend it from burglars. The kid had been maybe 8 or 9, practically ancient compared to them, but his ideas had been genius. Marbles on the floor to make people slip. Paint cans rigged to swing and hit people. Tar on the steps. Ice on the walkway. The twins couldn't do all of those things. They were 4 and had limited resources, but they could improvise. They spent the next 2 days planning, not acting, just planning. Because as James kept reminding John, the best plans were the ones you thought through carefully. They observed Mrs. Henderson's routine. Every day at 3 p.m., she went to the supply closet. Every day, she spent exactly 10 minutes in there. Every day, she came out looking satisfied and slightly guilty. They observed where the adults gathered for their breaks, where the director kept his schedule, when the big monthly inspection was scheduled. And then, when they had all the information they needed, they prepared their trap. The inspection is in 3 days, James said during another quiet time whisper session. The director always shows the inspectors the supply closet to prove we have enough supplies. Perfect, John said. So we need Mrs. Henderson to be in the supply closet at exactly the same time the director opens it for the inspectors. Exactly. But how do we guarantee she'll be in there at that exact moment? John thought about it. What if we left her a note? Made it look like it was from another staff member. Something like, emergency staff meeting in the supply closet at 2 p.m. Be there or be fired. She'd know that was fake. Okay, what if we told her someone saw a mouse in the supply closet and she needs to check it out? Better. But she might just send someone else to check. Not if we tell her the mouse was near the cookies. James's eyes widened. That's actually perfect. She'd have to go check herself because she wouldn't want anyone else to find the cookies. See? I do have good ideas sometimes. Very rarely. I'm going to hit you with a pillow. We're supposed to be napping. I'll hit you quietly. 3 days later, everything was in place. James had written the note in his best attempt at adult handwriting, which wasn't great, but it didn't have to be perfect. Mrs. Henderson. Several children reported seeing a mouse near the supply closet. Please check the upper shelves immediately. We can't have mice near the food supplies. Director. He'd slipped the note into Mrs. Henderson's mail cubby during breakfast when everyone was distracted by Marcus accidentally spilling an entire container of orange juice. At 1:45 p.m., the twins positioned themselves in the hallway where they could see the supply closet door but wouldn't be obvious. At 1:55 p.m., Mrs. Henderson came rushing down the hallway, looking worried, the note clutched in her hand. She unlocked the supply closet and went inside, leaving the door slightly open. The twins heard her moving things around. Where is it? I don't see any mouse. I swear if this is a false alarm. At exactly 2 p.m., the director appeared at the end of the hallway with 3 official-looking people in suits, the inspectors. And here we have our supply closet, the director was saying in his extra-friendly voice that he only used when important people were visiting. We keep it well stocked to ensure the children have everything they need. He reached for the door handle. The twins held their breath. The director opened the door. There was Mrs. Henderson standing on a step stool, surrounded by boxes of cookies, juice boxes, and candy bars, a chocolate chip cookie literally in her hand, frozen like a statue. There was a moment of perfect silence. Then one of the inspectors said, "What exactly is going on here?" Mrs. Henderson's face went white. There was a mouse." "Is that candy?" another inspector asked, pointing at the top shelf. "And juice boxes? The inventory report says the children's treats were depleted 2 months ago." The director's face was turning an interesting shade of purple. "Mrs. Henderson, what is the meaning of this?" I can explain." But she couldn't explain. Not really. Because there was no good explanation for why she was standing in a closet full of snacks that were supposed to be for orphans, eating cookies that had been paid for with donation money. The twins watched from their hiding spot as Mrs. Henderson tried to stammer out excuses, as the director got angrier and angrier. As the inspectors took notes and photos, they watched as Mrs. Henderson was escorted to the director's office, still trying to explain. They watched as other staff members were called in to account for the missing supplies. And when it was all over, when Mrs. Henderson had been fired and the police had been called to investigate possible theft, when the hidden supplies had been redistributed to the children like they should have been all along, the twins walked back to their dormitory, high-fived each other, and felt something they hadn't felt in a long time: victory. That night, for the first time in months, every kid in Sunnybrook Orphanage got cookies for dessert. The good cookies, the chocolate chip ones. They tasted like justice. And they tasted delicious. The morning after the great cookie scandal, as it came to be known, the twins woke up to a different orphanage. Mrs. Henderson was gone. Just gone. Her locker cleaned out, her schedule reassigned, her name removed from the staff board like she'd never existed at all. The director had called an emergency meeting the night before and told all the kids that due to unfortunate circumstances, staffing changes were being made. He didn't elaborate. He didn't have to. Everyone had heard about what happened. What nobody knew was that 2 4-year-olds had orchestrated the whole thing, and the twins planned to keep it that way. "Do you think they'll figure out it was us?" John whispered during breakfast, which was still the same terrible oatmeal but now came with juice boxes. Real juice boxes that tasted like actual fruit instead of sadness. "How would they?" James whispered back. "We didn't tell anyone. We didn't leave evidence. As far as everyone knows, Mrs. Henderson got caught because she was careless. We're geniuses, obviously." But their satisfaction was short-lived, because while Mrs. Henderson was gone, Mrs. Beatrice was very much still there, and Mrs. Beatrice was in a particularly terrible mood. She stomped around the orphanage like an angry rhinoceros, yelling at kids for breathing too loud, for walking too fast, for existing in her general vicinity. The other caregivers whispered that she was friends with Mrs. Henderson and was upset about what happened. The twins kept their heads down and stayed out of her way. They'd won one battle, but they knew better than to think the war was over. 3 days after Mrs. Henderson's departure, the twins witnessed something that made their blood boil. They were in the common room, playing with building blocks, and by playing, they meant constructing an elaborate fortress with defensive capabilities, because even their play was strategic, when they heard crying. Not just any crying, the heartbroken sobbing of a very small child. They looked up to see little Sarah, sweet 3-year-old Sarah, who believed everything and trusted everyone standing in the corner, tears streaming down her face, while Mrs. Beatrice loomed over her like an angry storm cloud. "I told you to clean up your toys, Mrs. Beatrice was saying, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. "I don't care if you can't reach the shelf. Figure it out. I'm not your maid." But I tried," Sarah hiccuped. "I'm too short." "Then you should have thought of that before you made such a mess. You'll stay in this corner until every single toy is put away. I don't care if it takes all day." Mrs. Beatrice turned and stomped away, leaving Sarah crying in the corner, surrounded by toys that were literally impossible for her tiny 3-year-old arms to lift high enough to reach the storage shelf. The twins looked at each other. "No," James said quietly. "Absolutely not," John agreed. They stood up in perfect unison, walked over to Sarah, and started picking up toys. "We'll help you," James said gently. But Mrs. Beatrice said I had to do it myself, Sarah sniffled. Mrs. Beatrice is a bully, John said matter-of-factly, and we don't listen to bullies. What's a bully? Someone who's mean to people smaller than them, James explained, lifting a large teddy bear onto the shelf. Someone who picks on people who can't fight back. Someone who needs to be taught a lesson, John added. Sarah looked between them with wide, tear-filled eyes. You're going to teach Mrs. Beatrice a lesson? Oh, yes, James said. A very important lesson, John confirmed. About why you shouldn't be mean to little kids, James continued. Or any kids, John said. Or actually anyone at all. But especially not 3-year-olds who are adorable and innocent. That's you, James told Sarah. You're adorable, John agreed. For the first time since her crying had started, Sarah smiled. You're nice. We're many things, James said. Nice is one of them. Smart is another. And very, very determined. What's determined mean? It means when we decide to do something, John said, putting the last toy on the shelf. We don't stop until it's done. All finished, James announced. Sarah looked at the now clean corner in amazement. You did it so fast. Teamwork, the twins said together. Also, we're tall for our age, John added. Not that tall, James corrected, but tall enough. Sarah threw her little arms around both of them in a hug that almost knocked them over. Thank you, thank you, thank you. You're welcome, James said, patting her head. Now go play somewhere Mrs. Beatrice can't see you. We have planning to do. After Sarah skipped away, already having forgotten her tears, because 3-year-olds were remarkably resilient, the twins returned to their fortress. But they weren't thinking about blocks anymore. They were thinking about revenge. We need to make Mrs. Beatrice's life miserable, John said. Agreed. But we have to be smart about it. We can't get caught. Obviously. So what's the plan? James was quiet for a moment, his brilliant 4-year-old brain working through possibilities. We need to think about what Mrs. Beatrice cares about. What would bother her the most? She cares about being in control, John said, and being respected, and being scary. So we take all those things away, James said slowly. We make her lose control. Make her look silly instead of scary. Make the other kids laugh at her instead of fear her. I love where this is going. We'll need supplies. We have crayon. We'll need more than crayons. We have blocks. John, we have our brains? Better, James said. We have access to the maintenance closet. John's eyes lit up. The maintenance closet was where they kept tools and paint and all sorts of potentially useful items. It was supposed to be locked, but the lock had been broken for 3 weeks and nobody had bothered to fix it yet. Are you thinking what I'm thinking? John asked. If you're thinking we're going to borrow some supplies for a very important project, then yes. I love how you say borrow like we're going to give them back. We might give them back. We definitely won't. Probably not, James admitted. That night, after lights out, the twins sneaked out of dormitory B. It wasn't hard. Mrs. Patterson was on night duty, and she was usually half asleep in her chair by 9 p.m. They crept down the dark hallway in their pajamas and bare feet, moving silently like tiny ninjas. The orphanage was different at night. Quieter. Kind of creepy. Shadows stretched across the walls and every small sound seemed louder. But the twins weren't scared. They were on a mission. They reached the maintenance closet and carefully opened the door. It creaked a little. Everything in this old building creaked, but not loud enough to wake anyone. Inside, they found exactly what they needed. A can of paint that was supposed to be for touching up the walls. It was bright pink, which explained why it hadn't been used yet. A bottle of dish soap, a roll of plastic wrap, some marbles that someone had apparently confiscated from a kid and never given back, and jackpot a whoopee cushion that must have belonged to one of the maintenance workers. This is perfect, John whispered, gathering supplies into a small bucket. We can do so much with this. Remember, James whispered back, we're not trying to hurt her, just humiliate her. There's a difference. Right. Humiliation, not hurt. Got it. They snuck back to their dormitory, hid their supplies under John's bed, and climbed back into their own beds just as Mrs. Patterson did her hourly check, shining her flashlight into the room to count sleeping children. They pretended to be asleep. Their hearts were pounding with excitement and a little bit of fear, but their faces were peaceful. Mrs. Patterson moved on. The twins opened their eyes in the dark and grinned at each other. Tomorrow, the pranks would begin. The first prank happened at breakfast. Mrs. Beatrice had a very specific routine. Every morning, she poured herself a cup of coffee, added exactly 2 sugars and a splash of cream, sat down at the staff table, and drank it while glaring at the children like she was imagining them all being quiet for once in their lives. The twins had watched this routine for years. They knew it by heart. So when they snuck into the staff break room before breakfast and carefully, very carefully swapped the sugar bowl contents with salt, well, they made sure to be in the cafeteria when Mrs. Beatrice took her first sip. They watched as she poured her coffee, added her usual 2 sugars, which were actually 2 spoonfuls of salt, added her cream, stirred it carefully. They watched as she sat down, raised the cup to her lips, and took a big drink. Her face did something amazing. It went through shock, disgust, and rage in about 2 seconds. She spat the coffee back into the cup, which was gross but also hilarious, looked at her coffee like it had personally betrayed her, and then looked around the cafeteria suspiciously. The twins were the picture of innocence, eating their oatmeal and having a very serious conversation about blocks. Mrs. Beatrice dumped out her coffee, muttering about cheap coffee and terrible quality, and stomped off to find something else to drink. The twins high-fived under the table. Prank 1. Success. The second prank happened at lunch. Mrs. Beatrice always sat in the same chair at the staff table. Always. It was her chair, and everyone knew it. During the twins' bathroom break, which they didn't actually need but had asked for anyway, they snuck into the cafeteria and carefully placed the whoopee cushion on Mrs. Beatrice's chair, covering it with her seat cushion so it wasn't visible. Then, they waited. Lunchtime came. The kids filed in. The staff filed in. Mrs. Beatrice marched to her chair, exhausted from a morning of yelling at children, and sat down heavily. Prufutu, fe, korra. The sound echoed through the entire cafeteria. Dead silence. Then slowly, one kid started giggling, then another, then another. Soon, the entire cafeteria was laughing. Mrs. Beatrice's face turned redder than anyone had ever seen. She stood up, discovered the whoopee cushion, and held it up like it was evidence of a crime. "Who did this?" she demanded. Nobody answered, partly because they didn't know, and partly because they were laughing too hard to speak. Mrs. Beatrice's eyes swept across the room, landing on every child, looking for guilt. The twins were laughing along with everyone else, but not too hard, not suspiciously hard, just normal kid who thinks fart noises are funny hard. Mrs. Beatrice couldn't prove anything. She threw the whoopee cushion in the trash and sat down again, this time checking her chair first. The laughter continued for the rest of lunch. Prank 2. Success. The third prank was the most elaborate. The twins knew that every afternoon at 2 p.m., Mrs. Beatrice walked down the main hallway to do her rounds, checking on the different dormitories. She walked the same path every single day. So the twins, with careful planning and excellent timing, set up their masterpiece. They placed marbles on the floor right at the corner where Mrs. Beatrice always turned. They covered them with a thin piece of paper that matched the floor color construction paper they'd borrowed from the art supply box. Then they waited around the corner with several other kids who they'd told something funny is about to happen. At exactly 2 p.m., they heard Mrs. Beatrice's distinctive heavy footsteps coming down the hallway. Stomp, stomp, stomp. She turned the corner. Her foot hit the marbles. The marbles rolled. Mrs. Beatrice's feet went out from under her like she was in a cartoon. She landed on her backside with a thump that shook the floor. The kids peeked around the corner. Mrs. Beatrice sat on the floor, surrounded by marbles, looking absolutely furious and completely confused about how she'd ended up there. "Are you okay?" little Sarah asked innocently. Mrs. Beatrice glared at her. "Who put marbles on the floor?" "What marbles?" Sarah asked, which was technically true because she hadn't put them there and didn't know they were there until just now. "These marbles." Mrs. Beatrice gestured at the evidence. "Oh, those marbles," Sarah said. "I don't know where those came from." Mrs. Beatrice struggled to get up. It's hard to stand when you're surrounded by rolling marbles, and finally managed it, her uniform dirty and her dignity in shambles. She limped away, muttering about demon children and "this job doesn't pay enough." The twins and the other kids dissolved into giggles the moment she was out of sight. Prank 3. Success. The pranks continued for a week. The plastic wrap across the bathroom doorway. Mrs. Beatrice walked right into it. The dish soap in the hand sanitizer dispenser. Her hands were covered in bubbles. The fake spider in her desk drawer. She screamed. The switch name tags on all the dormitory doors. She got very confused about which kids belonged where. Each prank was small. Each prank was harmless. But together, they were making Mrs. Beatrice lose her mind. More importantly, the other kids were starting to realize that Mrs. Beatrice wasn't scary. She was just a person. A mean person who kept having ridiculous things happen to her. It was hard to be afraid of someone when you just watched them slip on marbles and fall on their butt. But all good things must come to an end. On the 8th day of pranks, the twins were setting up their next masterpiece. They'd found a container of glitter and had plans for it when they overheard something that made them stop cold. They were hiding in the supply closet, the same supply closet where they'd caught Mrs. Henderson when they heard voices in the hallway. Adult voices. The director's voice. And someone else. Someone official sounding. "I understand your concerns," the director was saying, "but we simply don't have the budget for it." "Mr. Patterson, we've been over this," the official voice said. "The donation money should be more than enough. Unless..." "Unless what?" "Unless it's being misappropriated. I assure you, every penny goes directly to the children's care." The twins exchanged a look. They'd heard that word before. Misappropriated. It meant money being used for the wrong thing. Being stolen. Just like the cookies. "Then perhaps you can explain," the official voice continued, "why your budget reports show thousands of dollars in miscellaneous expenses with no itemized breakdown. Those are operational costs." "Mr. Patterson, I'm going to be direct with you. I'm from the State Department of Child Services. We've had complaints about this facility, about missing supplies, about poor conditions, and now, with the recent incident involving staff theft." That was one person. Was it? Or was it a symptom of a larger problem? Silence. The twins pressed their ears against the crack in the door, barely breathing. "I'm giving you 2 weeks, the official voice said. 2 weeks to get your books in order and provide documentation for every dollar of donation money from the past year. If you can't, we'll be conducting a full investigation, and if we find what I think we're going to find..." "You'll find nothing," the director said quickly. Too quickly. Because there's nothing to find. "For the children's sake, I hope you're right." Footsteps walked away. One set going one direction, the other set going another. The twins waited until they were sure both adults were gone, then slowly opened the supply closet door and looked at each other. "Did you hear what I heard?" John whispered. "The director is stealing," James whispered back. "Not just Mrs. Henderson, the director himself." "But he's the director. He's in charge. He's supposed to protect us." "Yeah," James said, his face set in determination. "He's supposed to, but he's not. He's stealing from us, just like Mrs. Henderson." "What do we do?" James thought about it. This was bigger than pranks. This was bigger than making someone fall on marbles. This was about money that was supposed to help kids have better lives being used for... What? The director's fancy car? His nice suits? His big office? "We investigate," James decided. "We find proof, and then we make sure that official person finds it too." "How are we going to do that? We're 4. We can't exactly demand to see the budget reports." "No," James agreed. "But we can be in the right place at the right time. We can watch. We can listen. And when we see something suspicious, we can." He paused, thinking. "We can document it." "How?" "Remember Mrs. Patterson's camera? The one we talked about borrowing before?" "Yeah? I think it's time we borrowed it." And so began the twins' biggest investigation yet. Borrowing Mrs. Patterson's camera turned out to be easier than expected. She kept it in her office, in her desk drawer, and she always went to the cafeteria for her lunch break at exactly noon. The twins waited until noon, snuck into her office, took the camera, and were back in their dormitory before anyone noticed they were gone. "This feels wrong," John said, holding the camera carefully. "Mrs. Patterson is nice. We're basically stealing from her." "We're borrowing," James corrected, "and we'll give it back, probably with pictures of important things on it. She'll understand." "You don't know that." "I have faith in nice people," James said. "Now come on, we have detecting to do." The twins had learned a lot about investigation in their 2 years of serious investigative work at Sunnybrook. They'd learned that adults talked more freely when they didn't think kids were listening. They'd learned that important papers were often left lying around in unlocked offices. They'd learned that being small and cute meant you could go almost anywhere, and people just assumed you were lost. They used all of these skills over the next 3 days. They pretended to be lost and wandered into the director's office, where they accidentally took pictures of papers on his desk while apologizing for being in the wrong room. They hid under the desk in the staff break room and listened to Mrs. Beatrice complaining to another caregiver about how the director was buying new furniture for his office instead of fixing the broken heater in dormitory C. They watched the director load boxes into his car late at night. Boxes that, according to the labels, contained supplies for the orphanage, but were apparently going home with him instead. They documented everything. And when they had enough evidence, they did something very clever. They left the camera, full of incriminating photos, in the hallway right outside the conference room where the director was scheduled to meet with the official from Child Services. Then they waited. The official found the camera. "What's this doing here?" The official turned it on. "Let me just check if there's any identification." The official saw the photos. What in the world? The twins, watching from around the corner, saw the official's face change from curious to shocked to absolutely furious in the span of about 30 seconds. The official walked into the conference room where the director was waiting. The twins couldn't hear the conversation, but they could hear the director's voice getting louder and more defensive. They heard words like investigation and fraud and criminal charges. They heard the director trying to explain, trying to justify, trying to lie his way out of trouble. But you can't lie your way out of photographs. 2 hours later, the director was escorted out of Sunnybrook Orphanage by police officers. 2 hours after that, a new temporary director arrived to take over until a permanent replacement could be found. And 3 hours after that, Mrs. Patterson came looking for her camera. She found it sitting on a table in the common room, mysteriously returned, with all the incriminating photos mysteriously deleted, but one new photo added. A picture of 2 4-year-old boys making silly faces at the camera with a note written in crayon. "Thanks for the borrow. You're the best. Your favorite twins." Mrs. Patterson looked at the photo for a long time. Then she smiled, shook her head, and put the camera back in her office. She never said a word about it. The next few weeks were chaotic at Sunnybrook. The new temporary director, Mrs. Kim, was actually competent and kind. She immediately instituted changes, better food, fixed heaters, new toys that weren't broken, and most importantly, accountability for every dollar of donation money. Mrs. Beatrice quit. She didn't say why, but the twins suspected it was because Mrs. Kim didn't tolerate bullying and had made that very clear in her first staff meeting. Either way, they considered it a victory. The kids at Sunnybrook started to thrive. With better food and warmer rooms and caregivers who actually cared, the whole atmosphere of the place changed. But the twins knew something that the other kids didn't know. No matter how good the orphanage got, it was still an orphanage. The twins had been at Sunnybrook Orphanage for 2 years, not counting the first 2 years of their lives spent in the nursery wing, which they were too young to remember. Sunnybrook was owned and operated by New Beginnings Adoption Services, the same agency that had promised their birth mother they'd been placed with a loving family while actually dumping them here and pocketing the money. And at that time, one thing was clear to them. Orphans were there for one reason. Nobody had chosen them yet. The twins had been at Sunnybrook for years. They'd watched dozens of kids get adopted. Babies went fast. Cute toddlers went pretty fast too. Individual kids went eventually. But twins? Twins who refused to be separated? Twins who were too smart and too difficult and asked too many questions? Those twins stayed. "Do you think anyone will ever adopt us?" John asked one night, lying in his bed and staring at the ceiling. "I don't know," James admitted from his own bed. "Probably not together." "Then probably not at all." "Yeah." They were quiet for a moment. "James?" Yeah? If they try to separate us. If they say we have to go to different families. We run away, James said firmly. We already talked about this. We stay together no matter what. You promise? I promise. Good. But the universe, apparently, had other plans. 3 weeks after the director was arrested, Mrs. Kim called the twins to her office. James, John, she said kindly, gesturing to 2 chairs in front of her desk. Please sit. They sat, exchanging worried glances. Had they been caught? Had someone figured out they were behind everything? Were they in trouble? Boys, Mrs. Kim said gently, I know you've been here a long time. All our lives, James said. Since we were 2 years old and 2 years in the nursery wing, John added. Yes. And I know that being twins makes adoption difficult. Many families want 1 child, not 2. Here it comes, James thought. The separation talk. The it would be better for everyone talk. The you'd each have a better chance talk. He reached over and grabbed John's hand. John squeezed back. We're not getting separated, John said firmly. We already decided. We run away before we let that happen, James added. Mrs. Kim looked startled. No, that's not what I'm saying at all. The twins blinked. It's not? No. I'm saying there's someone here to meet you. Someone who's been coming to visit different orphanages, looking for the right child to adopt, or children. He's in the common room right now, and he specifically asked to meet you 2. The twins looked at each other. This had happened before. People came to meet them sometimes. They asked questions. They smiled. They said the twins were adorable. And then they left. What makes this one different? James asked skeptically. I don't know if he is different, Mrs. Kim admitted. But he seems sincere, and he specifically said he was looking for siblings. He thinks kids who have each other are lucky. That was new. Okay, John said cautiously. We'll meet him. But we're not getting our hopes up, James added. That's very wise, Mrs. Kim said. Come on. He's been watching you 2 play for the last 15 minutes. She led them to the common room, where they'd set up their latest project, an elaborate marble run made from blocks, cardboard tubes, and anything else they could find. It was their most ambitious build, yet marbles could enter at 6 different points, travel through loops and spirals, and end up in a collection bucket at the bottom. Standing next to their marble run, watching it with fascination, was a man. He was younger than most adults, who came looking to adopt, maybe late 20s. He had distinctive white-silver hair that made him easy to spot. And he was Korean American. He wore simple clothes, nothing fancy, and he was crouched down to be at the marble run's level, studying it carefully. He didn't notice them approaching at first. He was too busy watching a marble make its way through the entire system. Incredible, he murmured. The engineering on this, the weight distribution. Whoever built this understands physics. We built it, James said. The man turned, and the twins saw his face for the first time. Warm brown eyes that looked kind. A gentle smile. No trace of the fake enthusiasm or forced cheerfulness that most prospective parents had. You 2 built this? He asked. Yes, sir, John said. Together? We do everything together, James said firmly. We're a package deal, John added. Non-negotiable, they said in unison. The man's smile got bigger. I would hope so. Separating brothers would be. He seemed to search for the word. Wrong. Just wrong. The twins stared at him. Adults never said that. Adults always said it would be hard, but ultimately better, or give them each individual attention, or improve their chances. Never just wrong. I'm Michael, the man said, standing up and offering his hand to shake. Michael Park. James said, shaking his hand politely. John said, doing the same. Mrs. Kim tells me you're 4 years old, Michael said. Yes, sir. And you built this marble run yourselves? No adult help? No adult help, James confirmed. We asked Mrs. Patterson for some cardboard tubes and she gave them to us, but we built everything ourselves. In one afternoon, John added proudly. Michael crouched back down, bringing himself to their eye level. Can you walk me through how it works? I'm fascinated." And just like that, the twins were off. They explained the entry points and the weight distribution and how they'd had to reinforce certain sections because the marbles were heavier than they expected. They explained their plan to add even more sections, but they'd run out of cardboard tubes. Michael listened to every word, like it was the most interesting thing he'd ever heard. He asked questions, good questions, questions that showed he actually understood what they'd built. He didn't talk down to them. He didn't pat their heads and call them cute. He didn't check his watch or look bored. He just listened. "You know," Michael said after they'd finished explaining, "I'm an engineer. I work with computers, but I studied structural engineering in college. And I have to say, this is some of the best design work I've seen from anyone, let alone 4-year-olds. "Really?" John's eyes went wide. "Really? The way you've balanced the weight distribution? The angle of these ramps? That's advanced stuff." "We're very smart," James said matter-of-factly. "I can see that," Michael said, smiling. "Mrs. Kim mentioned you've been here for 2 years, and 2 years in the nursery wing your whole life." "We've been orphans all of our lives," John confirmed. "And nobody's adopted you?" The twins exchanged a glance. "People don't want twins," James said carefully. "They want one kid. And we won't be separated," John added. "So they leave." "They always leave," James finished. Something passed across Michael's face, something that looked like sadness and determination mixed together. "Can I tell you something?" he asked. "Okay," the twins said. "I came here today because I lost my family, friends. Not because they died," he added quickly, seeing their concerned faces. Because circumstances separated us. And I've spent years feeling alone, feeling like I was missing something important." He paused, looking at the marble run, then back at them. "I didn't come here looking for one child," he said. "I came here hoping to find siblings, kids who understand what it means to have someone, who understand that family isn't about being related by blood. It's about choosing to be there for each other." The twins were very quiet. "I saw you two playing," Michael continued, "building this incredible thing together, working in perfect sync like you could read each other's minds, laughing when something went wrong, and fixing it together instead of blaming each other. And I thought, those boys understand what family means better than most adults I know." "So," James started, almost afraid to ask, "you want to adopt us? Both of us?" "If you'll have me," Michael said. "I know I'm not perfect. I work a lot. I live in a regular apartment, nothing fancy. I can't promise you everything. But I can promise that I'll never try to separate you, that I'll support you in being exactly as smart and curious and brilliant as you are, that you'll always have a home with me." The twins looked at each other, having one of their silent conversations. It seemed too good to be true. Adults didn't just show up and want them both. Adults didn't understand about not separating them. Adults didn't call them brilliant. But Michael's eyes were honest. His words felt real. "We have conditions," James said finally. "Okay," Michael said seriously. "What are your conditions?" "We need to be able to keep investigating things," James said. "We're detectives. It's what we do. We solve mysteries," John explained. "Important ones. Like the case of the missing cookies," James said. "And the mystery of the mean director," John added. Michael's eyebrows went up. Did you have something to do with the director getting arrested?" The twins looked at him with completely innocent faces. "We have no idea what you're talking about," they said in perfect unison. Michael stared at them for a moment, then started laughing. "Oh man, what am I getting myself into?" "A lot of trouble," the twins said honestly. "We're very good at finding trouble," James said. "And solving it," John added. "But mostly finding it," James admitted. "Can you handle that?" John asked. "Because we don't do quiet. We don't do boring. We ask a lot of questions, and we investigate things. And we're probably going to give you gray hair." "I already have gray hair," Michael pointed out, gesturing to his white-silver hair. "Then more gray hair," James said. Michael looked at these two 4-year-olds, these brilliant, troublemaking, wonderful 4-year-olds, and smiled. "I think I can handle it," he said. "As long as you can handle having a dad who's going to encourage your investigating and maybe teach you some computer programming and definitely isn't going to make you stop being exactly who you are." "Wait," John said. "You'd encourage it? Why wouldn't I? You're clearly good at it, and the world needs more people who notice when things are wrong and actually do something about it." The twins looked at each other one more time. And then, for the first time living at Sunnybrook Orphanage, they let themselves hope. "Okay," James said. "Okay?" Michael repeated. "Okay, you can adopt us," John clarified. "Both of us," James added, just to be clear. "Together," they said in unison. "Forever," Michael said firmly. "Together, forever." And then 2 4-year-old boys who'd spent years being told they were too difficult, too smart, too attached to each other, too much trouble. Those 2 4-year-old boys had a family. The adoption process took 6 weeks. 6 weeks of paperwork and background checks and home visits and meetings with social workers. The twins didn't mind. They'd waited for years. They could wait 6 more weeks. Besides, Michael visited them every single day. He brought books and puzzles and taught them basic computer programming on a laptop he borrowed. He played with them and listened to their elaborate explanations of the investigations they'd solved. He never once suggested they should be quieter or less curious or easier to manage. He liked them exactly as they were. On the day they finally left Sunnybrook, their few belongings packed in bags, their favorite marble run carefully disassembled and boxed up to take with them, the other kids threw them a party. Little Sarah cried and hugged them and made them promise to come back and visit. Mrs. Patterson gave them a photo album she'd made with pictures of all their time at the orphanage. Even Mrs. Kim had tears in her eyes as she signed the final papers. "You two are special," she told them. "Don't ever let anyone tell you otherwise." "We know," the twins said, because at this point, they really did know. Michael led them out to his car, a regular car, nothing fancy, just like he'd promised, and helped them buckle into the back seats. "Ready?" he asked. The twins looked at each other, then at the orphanage behind them, then at Michael. "Ready," they said. As the car pulled away from Sunnybrook, John turned to James and whispered, "We did it." "We survived," James whispered back. "We solved mysteries. We took down corrupt adults. We stayed together. And now we have a dad." They grinned at each other. That identical grin that had gotten them through years of being unwanted and unloved and told they were too much. "You know what this means," John said. "What?" "We need to get fake mustaches." "Why?" "Because all the best detectives have mustaches." "We're 4. So mustaches look ridiculous on 4-year-olds. "Exactly. We'll look professional and adorable." "That's not how it works." "Sure it is." From the front seat, they heard Michael laughing. "What are you two talking about back there?" "Professional development," the twins said in unison. "Of course you are," Michael said, still laughing. "Of course you are." 4 years later, James and John would be 8 years old. They'd have solved 47 cases. They'd have 150,000 YouTube subscribers on their Twin Detectives channel. They'd be wearing fake mustaches in all their videos, and they'd take down a billionaire who'd been hurting people for years. But that's another story, and if you haven't watched it yet, you definitely should. This story, the story of how 2 4-year-olds survived an orphanage, solved multiple crimes, and found a family, this story ends here. With 2 brilliant boys in the back seat of a regular car, heading to a regular apartment to live a hopefully not too regular life, with a dad who chose them, both of them, together forever, just like it should be. If you love this origin story of the Twin Detectives, smash that like button and drop a comment telling us your favorite part. Was it the nightmare monster chase? The cookie investigation? The marble trap revenge? Let us know. And hey, if you want to see more stories about James and John solving crimes and being generally awesome tiny humans, or similar stories like this with educational value, subscribe to this channel, because we're just getting started. These boys have a lot more adventures ahead of them. Thanks for watching. You're amazing, and we'll see you in the next story. God bless you.
Afro Tales. The weak will become strong one day.